Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for this very important discussion on violence against women, ending violence against women in Nigeria. This is a very important topic, and we appreciate each and every one of you for taking time out to join us. I'd like to welcome our guest speakers. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon. I also would like to acknowledge the different board members of both organizations who are co-sponsors of this program. That is GigaTime Foundation, GigaTime Care Foundation, as well as Bridging Development Gaps. My name is BC Adebayo, and I am one of the hosts for this session this afternoon. I also have three other co-hosts with me. I have Dr. Abby Adeleke. I have Ms. Funke Iluyomade. I also have Mrs. Funke Samuel, as well as Ms. Nonye Utu Onye. Thank you, everybody. This afternoon, we have quite a lineup of events, programs for the evening. We have a video session, a short video clip to situate the problem, as well as present the different aspects of the issue, which I know our excellent panel will do more justice to later on. We also have two strong women who will be telling us their personal stories, their personal experiences. But more importantly, they will also tell us how they pull themselves out of the situation to come out on the other side. I think that's very important for us. And then we go on to the very powerful women that are on our panel. Before we go on, please everybody mute yourself if you're not speaking. And if you have a question, you can raise your hand and then someone will acknowledge that. Questions will be taken from the chat, so if you prefer to do that, please go ahead. We'll make sure that it's all read. We also received some questions prior to the program that will also be addressed during the event. So without further ado, I think we'll start with the video, and then we'll now call on our panelists to present to deliver their presentations. I think that video just about sums up what GBV is, gender-based violence. We now go into the first session. I would like to call on Winifred. Winifred is she's a certified coach, John Maxwell coach. Ooh, that's exciting. And she's also a leadership expert, as well as founder of the Think STEM Foundation. She's an electrical engineer and telecoms and systems specialist. She's very passionate about STEM education and peace building. Her vision is to see future STEM professionals equipped with social and emotional skills to safely navigate their personal and professional lives. Her motto is strong girls, strong minds, and a strong world. Thank you so much, Winifred, for sharing your story with us, and we look forward to the tips that you have to share with us as well.
Okay, thank you for having me here. I would like to ask your tech professional to please spotlight me so that people will not be distracted and they can pay attention. So please put me on spotlight.
Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Am I on spotlight? Okay, good. Speaking from Charlotte, North Carolina. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. So it's 4 o'clock in the morning and he wakes me up. Why are there dishes in the sink? Why are the kids' rooms not clean? Why are there papers all over the house? I wake up groggily and I respond, why do you keep on harassing me? What do you want? Why are you so bothered about me? I'm not your housekeeper. Why do you do this? I'm raising children and children make a mess. And he responds, by the time I finish with you, you think you can just sit in this house and do what you like? You think you don't know this is, you think you are American now? You don't know that you're Nigerian. By the time I finish with you, you are going to be homeless and on the street. I turn around and look at him aghast. Is this not the man I married? This man that said he will love me for the rest of his life? What have I done? I lost 6 babies before I had my 2 children. I'd chosen to leave the corporate world to raise the children. Both of us agreed. But now, everything I did was offensive to him. It's American. The children have to do activities. The children have to do, they come home with so much homework. And it's a lot of work. But he doesn't understand. He's talking to me about dishes and clean house. We live in this big mansion that is an expression of his ego. And for him, having this clean mansion in a pristine condition is more important than taking care of his children. But his threats were not just something to ignore. But I did for a number of years, for 6 years. I lived in a grog state because my sleep was forever interrupted. So that time is very significant to me. 2 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock. Until today, 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock, I'm always waking up. But these days I wake up feeling grateful that the journey is over. I'm thankful that I can dance Zumba with my sister tribe, and I just finished doing a class with my sister tribe. So I'll just give you a brief. When I got married to him, he seemed like a normal guy. In actual fact, he just seemed to be a great coach. He was a professional. I'm a professional with a first degree in electrical and electronics. And I was about to go and do my master's in telecom systems engineering. So I met him that year just before I was going to do my master's in England. And I just thought I was the first to get married in my family. So everybody was really excited. So we got married, but 8 years after, 8 years, that's 1992, 8 years after, I lost 6 babies. I didn't know why, buried them. gone through stillbirths, early infant death, so many issues that one could not quantify what the problem was. Even the doctors did not know what the problem was. And there's a shame that comes with infant mortality and miscarriages, and there's the anguish the woman feels, but she has nobody to talk about. So I buried all that anguish within me. I didn't even talk to anybody about it, and I was very busy. We were building the internet. My talent was highly sought after, so I was put on so many projects. I didn't even have time to think of the babies that I had buried, and I just moved on. 8 years after I got the good Lord gave us two children, blessed us with two children back to back, and it was such a miracle. We were so excited, and so I decided to take time off to raise the children. But now it was all wahala. Now that I was at home raising the children, and so my doctors had given me medicine because I could barely sleep, and I suffered adverse reaction from the medicine. And so for 6 years, between the medication mismanagement and him harassing me at home, life was hell. It was the dark night of my soul, which people call, which some psychiatrists will talk later, depression. I was in a fog. I was in terrible depression. In 2012, my QC friends reached out to me and they were like, this story is enough. You've got to get out of this marriage. One of my QC friends, and I did. I left, I went to court and I filed the restraining order against him. But that was not not the wisest thing to do. I went to my pastors, talked to them, went and filed a restraining order against him. Unfortunately for me, he had the house wired. He had videos in the house. I didn't know he did. So he had the conversation with my friend. And when I went to court, he had his lawyers there with him. And I had been a stay-at-home mom, so I didn't even have a lawyer. And so he kept me in court for 7 years. I dropped the restraining order. We battled over custody of the children, over the assets of the house, because there were a lot of assets. So in my very compromised state, with because of the years of lack of sleep or excessive sleep, it was really tough for me. But I just couldn't let my children go to live with him. I had to fight for their future, because if he could treat me this badly at home, I wondered about the children's future. I had been sexually exploited by him, financially exploited, isolated. There was barely, I had to cut coupons in order to feed the house. It was hell. And this is the vice president of a bank. He was very well paid, but his money was his money. And basically, I had to find a way for me and my children to survive. We had this 6-bedroom house, beautiful house. We had flashy cars outside. We had the lawn mowed, but inside we were really, really poor. So I decided to leave the marriage. Like I said, so we stayed in court for I think 7 years. And at the end of it, I ran out of money. I'd sunk hundreds of thousands of dollars. Friends had donated money to my legal case just because I didn't want to give up my children. And at the end of the day, I lost custody of the kids. I ran out of money. And to cap it all, the court said I had to pay his legal fees. Of course, because I didn't have good representation. So the whole experience ended in October 4th last year. That's 2019. So for 28 years, I'd had this relationship that had affected me terribly on an emotional level. I'm so grateful that experience is over, but I learned a lot during that experience. And there are some things I learned. One of the things I learned is that domestic violence occurs to anybody. It can occur to anybody, irrespective of your socioeconomic status. I have a friend, I graduated summa cum laude with electrical and electronic engineering, the first woman in University of Lagos. I have a master's in telecoms and systems engineering, telecoms and systems engineering distinction from the University of Essex. I've had top jobs in telecoms, oil and gas. But irrespective of that, and he is a banker in top organizations, the head of divisions of bank, irrespective of the socio-economic status, domestic violence was our reality. So at the root of domestic violence, one of the lessons I learned is the power and control dynamic. There's a person who has power, maybe financial power, It can be power. You can find women who are abusive too, and they may have power in terms of beauty, and they use that as a tool. That is very rare. Most times the abuser is the man. So, and basically, one of the things it begins to do with you is to make you dependent on him. And in my case, my leaving the corporate world to be at home I didn't realize I was falling into a trap. I thought I was doing what was right for the family because his job involved a lot of his time. His job was very time consuming, and my job as an engineer had to travel. So I thought I was doing the right thing for the family, but not realizing that I was falling into a deep hole. So there's a power and control dynamic. Somebody has maybe financial power, and and the person begins to use it to oppress the other person. And one of the things they do is to isolate you, because if they can isolate you, they can speak, they can abuse you verbally, and then all of a sudden it's what they have said about you. That is what will begin to reoccur in your mind, and you begin to see yourself through the eyes of your abuser. Another thing that I learned is that the time a woman leaves a marriage or a relationship that is abusive is the most dangerous time for that woman. It is very important for safety planning. You can't just leave the marriage or leave the home and go to the court or go to a place and say, oh, I'm done with you. I did. I left. I went to court. The same people I went to protect me abused me. I had to pay his legal fees. They kept me there for 7 years. They took me, ate me like a meal, and threw me out on the street. It was the church that came around me to support me and help me heal. So you have to have a safety plan. It is very important. Statistics says that it takes a woman 7 times for her to leave the relationship finally. Typically, they will leave, they will come back, they will leave, they will come back, they will frustrate everybody trying to help them get out of the relationship because it's very tough. There's no clear pathway and there's no one size fits all. Most times this woman has been so battered in the home and she has been put in a state of dependence that when she leaves, she's like, where do I go? How do I get a job? How do I make money? How do I live? How do I stay in a place where I'm not dependent on another person? So re-victimization is very, very high, where you are re-victimized, and we call that cultural and structural violence. So you can experience direct violence at home from your abuser and experience cultural and structural violence from the community. So it's very important that there is a safety plan in place. You have to talk to somebody and in order to come up with a well thought out plan so that you protect yourself. Your safety is very important, more important than going to court. The pastor told me to go to court. I wish he had told me to just go and live and get well first before I went to court. So safety planning is very important. And the third part of it is that most times there's so much, it's very hard to break free. So it is very important. Counseling is important. It is important to surround yourself with a community that will help you get back your health. Most times your mental health is compromised because you have been in a toxic environment for so long. So you are so traumatized. The way you think, the way you feel, somebody from outside will look at you and say, what's wrong with this person? You have a trauma story. So it's important that you get some counseling in order to get yourself back stronger. So, after 7 years of all that wahala, I'm so much better. I have gone through my deep therapeutic work. Right now, I'm the director of Women in Technology International. I fought so hard for my children. Praise God, they're doing well. My son is in Stanford doing computer science. My daughter is in Princeton, and she's going to do software engineering. So I thank God about my story, but so many women are not as lucky as I am. A lot of women, because of just the stress of the environment, of the legal situation, the home situation, the legal situation, it affects their health deeply. So I cannot overemphasize that, it takes courage to leave a relationship, and it takes courage to get yourself back. But it takes empathy from the community to get the woman stronger. And it takes optimism, empathy and optimism to get the woman back to herself, where she can contribute to the community. So each one of us can be an ambassador. Each one of us can be a support to a woman who is going through a difficult situation. So rather than ask, why don't you leave? Rather than ask, get over this situation, I would like to encourage you. It's very difficult. I was in a relationship, it was a total 28 years. It's very difficult to recover from it. Till today, 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock, I still wake up. So supporting a woman, going to a school, talking to young girls about the red flags of abusive relationship, I would like to encourage you that you can make a difference in this whole conversation about domestic violence. And I thank you, BC, for giving me the opportunity to talk to everybody. I hope I inspired you and empowered you. Right now, there's 16 days of activism from the UN. I'm inspiring you to take an active role in building a peaceful community. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Winifred. Thank you very much for that very empowering and inspiring story. I think more importantly is the fact that you came up stronger. And you were able to rebuild yourself, rebuild your life, as well as the life of your children. We'll come back to you with any further questions. Thank you for all the tips and the nuggets that you left on the table. We'll recount that later on during the event. We also have some polls lined up for us to find out what we all know. Winifred has employed us to, have empathy for other women when they tell us their stories. So, but before you can begin to have empathy, you need to have your facts right. You need to know what you're dealing with. You need information on the subject. So this is what our poll is all about. And we are going to bring them up at different times during this afternoon. So the first one is coming up. Keep your eyes on the screen. We want to do this in 1-2 minutes, yes or no, and then the results will come back to you. So the second question is there, 1 or 2 minutes. Funke will let us know how we are doing. The poll is very anonymous, so please do not hesitate to provide your answers. Nobody will know what you have written or who has written what, so it's an anonymous poll. The poll is closing.
The poll has closed. The poll has closed.
Thank you, Dr. Abi. Do you want to give us the results?
Sure. So the first question was 30% of girls and women in Nigeria aged between 15 and 49 have reportedly experienced sexual abuse. 80% said true, 10% said false. So overall majority said true. The second question was, do you know that over 40% of girls in Nigeria are married off before the age of 18, which is the age of consent, I guess? Yeah. Majority, 80% said yes. 15% said, I do not know. And 5% said no.
Thank you so much, Abby. I hope one of our speakers will pick up. I think we need some awareness on what early marriage is all about. Thank you for mentioning that the age of consent is 18 years old. But in Nigeria, especially in northern Nigeria, we know that girls are married off from as early as 13 years old. We have different cultural marriages. On Saturday, I was listening to a program on money wives, and these are children betrothed from when their moms, when they were in the womb. So this is a huge problem in Nigeria, but it's not widely spoken about. A lot of people don't even know it exists. So while we are touting about domestic violence and all that, there are different forms of violence against women. The video that we showed captured a few of that. Now I would now like to move on to our next speaker, who will also be sharing about her personal experiences. Ms. Antonia Ojedagbon is the founder of Bruised But Not Broken. She is a child sexual survivor and an advocate for sexual violence survivors in Nigeria. She's also a TEDx speaker. Bruised But Not Broken is a support group for sexual violence survivors. Antonia, over to you. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Please unmute yourself, Antonia. And turn yourself.
I'm so sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. Good evening. I said good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. All protocols duly observed. My name is Antonia Ojedagbon. So I came to Lagos in 1992 to live with my uncle because my parents could not afford to take care of us. I'm the first of 9 children. My dad was a soldier man and my mom was a full-time housewife. So my parents couldn't take care of the 9 of 8. We were 8 when my dad died. My mom had the 9th one. She was pregnant when my father died. So I had to come to Lagos to live with my father's immediate younger brother, who my father had trained. And when he saw the way things were going on, he said he wanted to help my father train one of his children. Being that he was my favorite uncle, it was very easy for my parents to say that I should move to Lagos to come and stay with him. So one night I was sleeping and I felt a hand touch my breast, and the hand moved from my breast up to my vagina. Now, everywhere was very dark, so I didn't know who was doing this to me. I was very scared. And the hand began to play with my nipple and play with my vagina, and it was just doing all sorts. So by the time it was daybreak, I didn't know who was doing this to me, and it continued. Now, it took it a step further. In the night, somebody would, I used to say a monster, would raise my dress up, he would have sex with me, and in the morning, I wouldn't know who did this to me because everywhere is dark. But one day, my uncle said to me, if you ever tell anybody what is going on in this house, I will kill you. That was when I was able to put a face to this monster. And sadly for me, it was my uncle that I called daddy. Because in that process, my father now died without me telling my dad. My uncle always told me that, he told me that my father will not believe me. And he told me that if I say anything to anyone, that he was going to kill me because he knew my father before I was born, and that I will not be the one to spoil the relationship between him and my father. Then he told me that my mother was not going to believe me. So when I summoned the courage to now tell my mother, when my mother came to Lagos for a church program, my mother didn't believe me. Now my mom did something that made my uncle to laugh at me and mock me. So my mother was talking to my uncle's wife, and I just went to my uncle's wife as a young child and I said, auntie, that I want sanitary towel because she used to buy me pad every month. So as I told her that, my mother now asked my uncle's wife that, what is Antonia doing with a sanitary towel. My uncle's wife now told my mom that, Antonia has started seeing her period. My mother and my mother told my auntie that, you mean Antonia is now seeing her period? Two of them, they began to laugh at me. So as they were laughing, I looked at my uncle, and my uncle gave me this cynical look that said to me, I told you nobody would believe you. So that gave him the guts to continue. Now, in 1992, nobody told us that if you were being sexually violated by an adult, you should scream, you should talk to her, you should look for a trusted adult to talk to. You should shout until somebody listens to you. Nobody ever spoke about it publicly. And I didn't even know that the name was sexual abuse until I began to grow up. So one day, my friend invited me to a church, and after the service, the pastor said he needed to speak to us. When he spoke to us as first-timers of the church, I've never seen this man before. And he looks at me and he says, Antonia, you have something to tell me. Now, sexual abuse began to affect my academics. It began to affect my grades. I was the head girl in secondary school, but my grades began to drop because I could barely concentrate in class. By the time I was going to write my final exams, I failed. Now, the failure was so terrible that the people in my set, they would just ask a question like, what did the head girl get? So once you hear that, the head girl failed, they just went to go and register. A lot of them just went to go and register for GCE. They said, there's no need. Head girl failed. There's no need for me to check my result. It was that bad. So I'd never seen this pastor before. And he said, Antonia, you want to tell me that your uncle is sexually molesting you and you don't know what to do. So immediately he said that, I went on my knees and I began to cry. I started crying because for the first time, an adult would listen to me. An adult is here to help me. Then I cried. He gave me a handkerchief. I cleaned my eyes. He allowed me to cry because I was just wailing. After crying, he said to me, sit down because your uncle will come tonight. Do you want this abuse to stop? I said, yes. I asked the question. He said, have you ever shouted before? And I said, no. He said, tonight you're going to shout. He said, immediately your uncle comes this night and he raises up your dress. Just start shouting until his wife wakes up. Now, I need to add this here that all through the abuse, maybe because I never shouted, I never knew I was supposed to shout. His wife never woke up one day, and I don't know what happened. I don't know why she never did. So that night, as my uncle came, immediately he raised my dress up. I started shouting. Until the wife woke up. The pastor had told me that, remember, your father just died. So when you are shouting, you make it look like a nightmare. So when your uncle's wife asks you, now why are you screaming? Make it look like you had a nightmare, but you're passing a message to your uncle. So after shouting, of course, my uncle's wife woke up. Antonia, what's the problem? I said, Auntie, I'm having a bad dream. So they just assumed that, okay, because my dad just died, I was having a nightmare about my dad. But by the following morning, my uncle looked at me from my head to my toe. He hissed, he walked away. That was the end of the physical abuse. But you see, by that time, the mental damage and the emotional damage had been done. You know, it practically almost ruined my life. So what now came to my mind that time, because my family is a very small family. There was nowhere to go to except I wanted to go and be sleeping under the bridge. So every available guy that came, I wanted to marry him. Every available man who just said, hello, Tonia, I wanted to marry that man. Now, when my father died, my mother had the 9th child. My mother was 37 and she had 9 children. You know, when we spoke, I told you that I had to forgive my mom. It was difficult forgiving my mother because I felt she didn't stand for me. But you know, as I began to grow up and I had my own daughter too, and I said to myself, what does a 15-year-old know? Because my mother is also a child bride. My mother had me at 15. She got married at 14. She actually started seeing her menstrual period in my father's house. She told me that when my father married her and brought her to Port Harcourt, people thought she was my father's younger sister until she got pregnant. So I just said to myself, okay, what does a 15-year-old know? Now, it took me a long time before my mother would believe me. I had actually started speaking out. I was going to speak in Ekiti State in 2014. That was where my mother now asked me that, what are you going to do in Ekiti? And I said I was going to speak to students about sexual abuse. And my mother said, are you going to tell them this story? I said, yes. You will tell them it's your uncle, your father's brother. And I said, yes. And my mother said, Antonia, this thing you've been saying all these years, is it true? And I said, yes, Mama. You know, it was at that point my mother broke down and my mother began to cry. She started begging me that she's sorry, that she didn't know I was telling the truth, because my mother had actually told me that God was going to judge me for trying to implicate an innocent man. Because when my father died, my uncle really stood by my mom. You know, all the sharp practices that are being carried out in the villages against women, he stood, you know. He insisted that my mom was a Christian, so they didn't shave my mom's hair. He insisted. He insisted they were going to, some people were going to come and sleep with my dad's corpse throughout the night. I don't know what, they do something like that in my place. But he insisted that no, they were not going to do that, that because my dad was a military man, he was going to be given a full military burial. So he really stood by my mother. Now, my mother broke protocol. She was not supposed to step out 3 months after her husband was buried. But the following day after my dad's burial, my mother went to church, which was an abomination. It had never happened in our village. And they said nobody. She was almost, she was almost chased out of the village. When we went to church that day, I can still remember, nobody spoke to us in church. People moved. Like, how? You just buried your husband yesterday. You're not supposed to be in church. So he really, really stood by my mother, even when the chief of our village sent a message. You know, so it was difficult for my mom to believe that this person who really stood by me, this person who was there for me and didn't allow them to treat me anyhow, would be doing this to my daughter. So it was in 2014, my mother finally believed. Now, I never knew that you could seek help for sexual abuse, because I began to fall into severe bouts of depression. By 2015, I was admitted in the mental health facility because it was beginning to affect me. Now, after I came back from the mental health facility, I now started the support group. I now discovered that you have a lot of adults like myself who have gone through child sexual abuse, who have not healed. We're having children, but we are not healed. Our inner child is not healed. So a lot of us are not emotionally present in the life of our children. We're just bringing up children. So what the support group does is we bring therapists, counselors. It's just a support group, basically, where you come meet your sisters. It's a judgment-free zone. It's a safe space. No pictures, no videos, only the pictures of the facilitators, but we never post pictures of our support group meeting. Then we don't even video at all. We don't video the meetings at all, because a lot of the adults who come, most of them have gone through incest. And you know, incest is the most difficult part of sexual abuse to talk about, because it has to do with family members, close family members. So a lot of them have gone through incest. Their families don't even know, but they want to talk about it in a place where nobody would judge them, where nobody would tell them you tried to seduce this person. You know, so that is the reason why we set up the group. Now we started something called Living Purposefully Beyond Sexual Abuse. So in that support meeting is once every quarter. We bring in Nigerian women who have excelled in their various fields. We've brought people like Mrs. Awoshika, the chairman of First Bank Nigeria. We've brought Mrs. Shelley Okaredia, she's the founding director of Temple School. We have brought
Antonio, unmute yourself. Unmute. Yeah. We can hear you now, I think. Yeah.
You're good now.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you now, Antonia.
Oh, okay. Sorry,
Yeah.
please. I don't know what's going on.
It's okay.
Yes, I tried to change the network. Okay, so we brought Dr. Memuna Kadri, who is a psychiatrist. We bring in therapists, psychologists also, who come and talk to these women. Then we pair them up with counselors and trauma therapists so that they can begin their journey to wellness. So we have a lot of them like me now who will tell their story, but not from a place of pain. Who's telling her story? I'm not telling my story from a place of pain. The journey to wellness is a journey, actually. I'm a lot better. 5 years ago, I will never be able to sit here and tell you this story without breaking down. And again, I need to let you know that I sought help because of my children. My children started growing up and I was not present in their life emotionally, like I said. My husband practically brought up the children. So my children learned how to write letters on time, because when I'm in that depressive mood, I don't want to talk to you. And you can imagine every time your child wants to talk to you, your child says to you, "Mommy, are you in a good mood?" So the children started growing up to know that mommy is never in a good mood. So when I'm happy, they are happy. You know, most of the time when I'm moody, you just hear, "Mommy, are you in a good mood?" And I felt I didn't want my children to grow up like this, knowing that mommy usually has mood swing. So it was one of the reasons why I sought help, just to be a better person. So that's my story, basically. Thank you for inviting me to come share my story. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Antonia. Thank you very much for also reminding us that you are telling your story not from a place of pain, but from a better place. You know, you are a stronger woman now. If I'm coming now to tell your story, you are a stronger woman, because your story is not only raising awareness, it's also preventing other people going through similar situation, you know, from keeping quiet. They need to understand that they need to talk about the situation. We will move on to one of our excellencies, but before then, we have another poll coming up. Maybe I should recount some of the things that, you know, really stood out for me, Antonia, when you were talking, is that, you know, the abuser is usually a trusted person. While I'm talking, the poll is on your screen. Please just tick it. Let me reiterate again that it is anonymous, and then I can be talking while you're doing that. It's usually a trusted person. In your case, your uncle. And the fear of the abuser prevented you from speaking out. I hope we'll be able to ask you questions on that later on. The physical abuse is probably less damaging than the mental, because
than the mental.
After the physical stops, the mental still goes on. And you also mentioned the different consequences of that, you know, how it led you to want to marry every man that whispered, so much as whispered, "You're a pretty girl," not to go as far as I love you. So the consequences are, you know, enormous. And I'm glad that you've come out of that you were able to, you know, pull yourself to speak. A lot of people keep quiet about it. They don't talk about it, and that affects their lives throughout. Abby, how are we doing with the poll? And when are we stopping? Oh, the poll is closed. But there are 59 people online, only 21 voted. Do you want to leave it on?
Hello, I think it's the same poll question.
It's the same poll question.
It's the same question. Yeah, it's the same question.
No, we need the
same question. Yes.
Oh, here we go. Sorry. Here we go.
Thank you. Antonia touched on that. She wasn't able to report because of the fear that the uncle instilled in her. People also don't report because of stigma associated, the shame, and you know, this makes them to keep quiet about it. While the poll is ongoing,
right now, I think we can close it. We have more than half, 68% of the people have taken the poll.
Maybe we can wait a few seconds so that we get more people. It's a simple yes or no question. Do you think women and girls are more confident now than before, 10 years ago, to report?
It hasn't moved, so we can end it. Oh, okay. So maybe we just write it out. We have 7 seconds. Okay. So there is an overwhelming majority that says women and girls are more confident to report sexual abuse today than 10 years ago. 79% of the people agree, and 17% say no, and 8% say I do not know. Over to you, Dr. Bissy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abi, for that. Now I have the pleasure of welcoming His Excellency, wife of the Governor of Ogun State, Mrs. Bamidele Abiodun. I know she's a very busy woman. She just rushed in from the Governor's Wives Forum in Abuja, where coincidentally they are also addressing the same issue that we are discussing right now. Apart from being the wife of the governor, she's also a businesswoman. She's very passionate about women and children, which explains why she took time out to be with us this afternoon. And she was appointed in 2019 as the champion by one of a civil society coalition on sustainable development. So she's the UN Sustainable Development Champion. She has several pet projects, and I'm sure she would mention some of them here this afternoon. And they're all focused on social welfare, health, education, poverty reduction. She's worked on advancing the International Conference on Population and Development, which was convened by the UN Population Fund in Nairobi, Kenya. I must mention that that particular international conference is what is referred to as Beijing Conference. And it is the foundation, the bedrock of what we are doing today. That was what brought out the gender issues, brought out the issue of development of women in the world. I mean, that is the bedrock, the foundation of everything we do regarding empowerment of women and girls. She's organized several capacity building activities in her state. And I really would like us to give her a very warm welcome and shout out. Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I understand your time pressure, and we really appreciate that. So over to you. Tell us what you are doing in Ogun State, your challenges and how you've been able to manage that. And then, we'll come back to you with other questions.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for this honor. I'd like to thank the organizers of this virtual conference on ending gender-based violence. Incidentally, we are in Abuja and we're having a conference here, the Nigerian Governors' Wives Association Against Gender-Based Violence. And this morning we've had a policy dialogue meeting with some governors, the Nigerian Governors Forum. And we've been trashing out a lot of the issues that are existent and how we can move forward in the new era that we're in, where gender-based violence has now come to the fore and people are now able to speak out more. And I'm happy that, the first two speakers have spoken very well about their experiences, and I'm happy that you have very, very good examples that have come out of it. You know, this is to show that when you are a victim, you don't have to be ashamed. You know, you are not the perpetrator, so you're not the sinner, so you can't carry the burden of somebody else's sin. So there is hope, you know, and when you speak out, it also helps potential victims, you know, to either stay away from or quickly remove themselves from a situation of abuse. Now, I am pleased for the opportunity to speak on this issue because it has been on the forefront, like I said, of the work we have been doing, not only in Ogun State, but also collectively through the coalition of the Nigerian Governors' Wives Association against gender-based violence. Our decision to tackle this problem began very early this year when we thought that the cases of gender-based violence were becoming unacceptable. Little did we know that 2020 will bring a whole new dimension to the issues with the COVID-19 outbreak. I mean, I can from the video that we watched, even though it wasn't very audible, I see that you have your data very, very, very accurate. And you know, in June of this year, the doctors at the governors came together to declare a state of emergency because the rate of sexual and gender-based violence increased, most likely because people were at home with their abusers. And like one of the previous speakers had said, they usually know their abusers. The abusers are usually a member of a family or someone in the area, you know, someone that they know, you know. So as the world was grappling to deal with the global pandemic, Nigeria was facing the double trouble of serious cases of sexual and gender-based violence. We witnessed an alarming increase in incidences of rape, sexual assaults, murder, and general violence against women and young girls. And there was a national outcry for people in authority to do something. And thank God they did, because now where there's so much focus on gender-based violence, and I know that we haven't even scratched the surface yet, but I believe that I was talking to one of the other first ladies this afternoon, and she was saying that, you know, our culture affects us such that the woman is subdued, the woman is subjugated. You know, even some of us women think that it's okay to be oppressed, you know, so there's so many things that we need to unlearn. There's so many things that we need to change our orientation completely. You know, we need to, if some women feel that we can imagine the men, they feel empowered over the women, and they feel that the way they can exercise that power is by oppressing the woman or sexually violating the woman. You know, protests took place all around the country. And for the first time, the governors of the 36 states of the Federation came together to declare a state of emergency against sexual and gender-based violence. Since then, we have witnessed renewed commitment across all levels of government to ensure that our women and our girls are not victims of violence in any form. We have a long way to go, but I believe that if we continue to make noise, just continue. I mean, sometimes you push and you don't move anything, but just keep at it. If we keep at it, we'll eventually break through. In Ogun State, His Excellency, the Governor of Ogun State, inaugurated the Management Committee on Violence Against Person Prohibition Law, of which I'm the chairperson. The committee has a single mandate, that the VAP law works effectively to produce the intended results in the fight against all forms of domestic violence. Again, the problem is we enact laws, we come back, or we come together, we meet, we talk, we debate, but we don't implement. It is important and it is imperative that we implement the laws that we pass. Now, the committee works with the key stakeholders across the state to ensure that the different agencies responsible for providing speedy, proper, and professional responses to GBV work efficiently to produce results. Normally, I'll give an example, when someone is raped and we find out who the perpetrator is, and you want to prosecute the perpetrator, if you don't gather relevant evidence at the time or shortly after the rape, you will not be able to prosecute that person effectively. So it is important for us, and it's a whole process, to first allow the people to first teach them that they can come and speak up about rape. They can report rape cases. That's one. Then, wherever they're going to afterwards, the Sexual Assault Referral Center must have is it the medical first or the police first? The police should also report the case. They should be friendly enough to ensure that the case is the victim opens up and speaks says exactly what happened to her. Then the evidence needs to be taken and stored properly so that prosecution can eventually take place. Because most of these cases, they stop when you don't have a proper record of the event. You don't have the evidence stored properly. Any good lawyer will go, even a horrible lawyer will go to court and they'll throw the case out of court if you don't have your evidence. So the evidence is also very, very important in allowing us to get our end result, which is prosecuting the perpetrators. Now, we all know that the greatest deterrent against crime is law enforcement. When perpetrators of crime know that they will face the consequences of their actions, they will think twice before engaging in those kinds of acts. We also have the sexual violence register, which some states have. They write down the names of the convicted perpetrators. So if you put down somebody's name on a website or on a register, and the name is going to be there for life, it serves as a deterrent, because if you want to employ somebody now into a very sensitive position and you go to the register and you find the person's name, clearly you will not register the person. The people in the neighborhood will know that the person has committed a crime. And after some time, generations and generations of families of the person people around will know that this person committed such and such a crime on such a day. And so it will affect that person's family, it will affect that person's lifestyle. If men know that they're going to be named and shamed like that, it will serve as a deterrent for them, and they will not, it will hold them back. Another thing is our young boys, our little boys, I believe that it is very important to start to train our boys from the age of understanding, maybe the age of 2. Train them to respect women. Train them to know that it is not right to violate a woman. You know, if you start to teach a child something from when they are young, by the time they're 6, 7, 8, if somebody comes or a situation comes and presents itself to them, they will be put off because of what they have learned. So if we can now develop a generation of men or young boys who will find sexual violence abhorrent, because we've taught them from a very, very young age. Now, we know that last month we inaugurated the family support unit in the Nigerian police force in Ogun State. That's the first one that is in this federation. And it was done by the Ogun State Police Command, led by the Commissioner of Police. The family support unit is meant to be a haven where our people, no matter how young or old, can come forward and speak up without fear if they are experiencing any form of violence. We believe that this is crucial, is a crucial step to the recovery and hopefully to the future of an environment that is free of abuse. In attempting to bridge the gaps to end gender-based violence in Nigeria, our response is to take a result-oriented approach to end gender-based violence that identifies and incorporates the roles and obligations of all the players involved. as an avid champion of the Sustainable Development Goals, I propose that we find linkages where these issues can be addressed. But beyond that, we can also take a step further to quality education for young girls and women. It is important to educate our women. When you educate a woman, you empower the woman, and she knows her rights. This is also one of the key areas my office is working on. We're encouraging not only basic education for girls, but also business and entrepreneurship education for women, girls, and youth across the state through private sector collaborations to ensure that our women and young girls are elevated in their states and their status and thinking to be able to dissociate themselves from victimization. It has been a rewarding journey to witness the positive responses, especially at the grassroots level. And we believe that we can do more. We haven't done much, but we can do more to end gender-based violence in our society and safeguard the rights of women and girls in Nigeria. I'll stop at this point. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Bamidele. It's a pleasure listening to you and to some of the activities you've been carrying on in Ogun State. I am very, very, very excited that Ogun State has launched the Family Support Unit, and especially by the fact that it was launched by the police force, because we've had a lot of complaints, and the general belief is that even when people do reports, the police can actually traumatize. They will re-traumatize that victim who has come forward to report through their shaming and exercise and games that they play. I also took note of the sexual violence register, and at some point I hope you'll be able to tell us how effective you think that register would be. The perpetrator is always stronger, and it's a power display. It's a power issue. There are two current cases of people high up there politically that have raped other women, and it's also. Thank you so much for that, and I hope that I wish you well and good luck in the different endeavors that you are carrying on. It's important, like you said, that we develop and build another generation of young boys who will learn to respect women, who will understand that it is unacceptable to violate women. We've talked so much about sexual abuse. There are other forms of violence against women, which as a society, we need to come together to nip in the bud, not just the sexual assault aspect of it. And I hope that at some point this afternoon, some of the other speakers will talk on that. I think we can have another poll just as a break before we move on to our next speaker, another excellency. And then, yeah, that is it. Dr. Abi, do we have a poll coming up? So, ooh. Unfortunately, we don't have the police here to defend themselves.
Can I also mention something about the police and what you just said about people having confidence in the police?
Go ahead.
Okay. Clearly, a lot of us don't have confidence in the police that we have right now. But there is what we are doing in Ogun State right now. We're training our police officers, because the police station is the first place that you go to and report a case of sexual assault to. And if the police are not friendly enough, if they don't have the understanding or the empathy for the victim, there's no way they will discourage. They will even tell you, "Oh, did you? What are you wearing? I beg you, come out from this place." They will discourage you. They will make you feel worse than you felt before you went there. So now we've begun training our policemen so that they will be able to empathize with the women and also draw the women to them such that they're comfortable enough to express themselves. And like I said, it's a long journey, but little drops of water make a bucket full, and we can start with little steps like that. You know, if we start with little steps like that, I believe that eventually, especially with what has happened in the last few weeks on this NSAS protest, the spotlight has been put on the police force. So now they don't have a choice but to try to be what people say they are not. So we are trying to do that in Ogun State, and I don't know about other states, but I believe that by the grace of God, you know, if we get enough support, we will get to a point where, you know, it will be a thing of history to not have confidence in the police force.
Yeah, thank you so much for adding that on. I think our poll is just about, it's closed now.
The poll is ended, and as we probably feared, 96% said we do not have confidence in the police force. Her Excellency has kind of given us an idea of what one of the states is doing. So hopefully more states will do the same.
Yeah. Can I ask you, Excellency, does the police know what the general feeling of the people is about them? And within their unit, are they making, because if you hear criticisms about what you are doing and what the general public feel about you, that's feedback, and that should make you want to improve on yourself.
Okay. Well, what I know, I cannot speak much for the police, but what I know is that, yes, they know that people don't have confidence in them. And a lot of them are hardened. And I am not going to say anything about, that is not under my purview, but I know that I'm not making excuses for the policemen, but this is an establishment that has been like this for a long time. And it stems out of the fact that they are not well taken care of. They're not well paid. They risk their lives for us. Now, let me give you an example. I'm not making excuses for policemen. When the NSAS protests turned upside down and they started brutalizing the police people and they ran away, after everything calmed down, there was no security in Lagos. For instance, there were no policemen. They left the streets. If the policemen leave the streets, it shows us how vulnerable we can be. We were very, very, very vulnerable. Now, they had so dashed the morale of the police, and rightfully so too. They had dashed their morale. They didn't want to come out. But then who is left to protect us? So we have to work with what we have. We have to come to have a symbiotic relationship where we're dependent on one another. We need the police. We just don't need them in the state that they are in. And they know for sure that people don't have confidence in them. I'm sure that after this NSAS protest, they too are going to be willing to be to not be what people say they are.
Yeah. We hope so. And then with more training, I guess that should also help the situation. Definitely, they need a lot of training on empathy and also how to handle delicate cases like this. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. And it's been a pleasure to have you with us. I understand that you have to run back to the meeting of the Governor's Wives Association now. I was hoping that you'll tell us a little bit about that and you know, how you share information amongst yourselves, how you brainstorm, or everybody is just, you know, working on their own in solo.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Yes, you know, I was hoping that you share with us a little bit about the Association of the Governor's Wives. Do you brainstorm? Do you share experiences so that you are able to borrow from each other and, you know, learn from what each other is doing in the different states?
That's the whole essence of the association, to learn from one another, to encourage each other, to build each other up, to work together as a formidable force. So we are very, very interdependent on one another. We share information, whatever it is that we do, we talk about, so that we can encourage others, you know. It helps to breed a healthy relationship.
Yeah, that is very.
I wanted to say one more thing about the police people. I don't know why I'm passionate about this. It is also, you know, there's some police officers that are actually very, very special. Some of them are very, very passionate about their work and they're diligent in their work. And they of course, they took an oath when they joined the police force, and they really, I mean, go all out to do what they swore to do. For instance, we have this Assistant Commissioner of Police in Otta. His name is Officer Monday. He was the one that initiated the building of the family support unit in Ogun State, the first one in Nigeria. In Ogun State. He is the one that initiated it, and he put a lot of effort into it. And he's one of the people that carries the banner against, the banner in the fight against sexual and gender-based violence. So there's some, it's not all policemen that are horrible. Some of them are actually well-meaning, you know, citizens. So it's unfortunate. But like we said, with training over time, our police force will get better.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I really have to. My people they're pressuring me here because it has to get started.
Thank you so much. We'll excuse you. I don't know if we have any questions from the chat box for Her Excellencies before she runs off.
I think, Your Excellency, thank you so much. That was really fantastic. We do have quite a few questions, but most of them you've actually answered. But I just want to zoom into the one on the sexual offenders registry. I mean, how accessible is it? You've talked well about it in Ogun State, but what about other states? And how effective is it? You know, if I was to employ somebody, will I be able to go onto that list to just check for safeguarding purposes?
It's accessible, but we struggle to update the sexual register. It is usually under, it's operated by the Ministry for Women Affairs. Sometimes the cases take a long time, a very long time. And we're not, let me just put it, bottom line is we're not perfect yet in the sexual register, but we're working on how we're going to make it easily accessible to people, easily accessible to the public, you know. So it's not a perfect thing yet, but it's work in progress, but with very good intentions.
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, the training that you highlighted was very important. Can you just take us through the outline of the training? What exactly do you train the police officers on to show a sense of empathy? Can she hear us? Your Excellency,
we train. Sorry, we have 10 police divisions in Ogun State, And what we do with the policemen is just to train them how to collect information from people who approach them to report the cases of rape or sexual-based violence. Then how to how to collect the information, collect the statements properly, write the statements properly, because if the statements are not well written, the lawyers will find holes in the statements and they will not be able to prosecute adequately with them. Then also we train them to empathize with the women, like I said, to empathize with them and make them, friendly, such that the women are able to open up to them and tell them the truth, 100% truth, because sometimes the women withhold some things, maybe because they are ashamed or they feel that they'll be judged or they'll be criticized. So those are the main two things that we train.
Thank you very much. I can see Mina's hand is up. Yes.
So yeah.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you very much. Mina, can you just zoom in on us? Can you tell us what you want to?
Yes,
Thank you.
I think I'm zoomed in, or?
Yes, you are. That's just a phrase, friendly phrase.
Thank you, Madam, Your Excellency, for being so honest. Is she still there? I just wanted to thank for the honest delivering of your talk, because it was so much honesty I found, that when you said that we are still going little steps, and that was such a encouraging your statement. And therefore I have two questions. Number one, that we heard from previous speakers, that one is that, and this is not only Nigeria, although I'm based in Switzerland, but of course, being a former WHO staff, I know that this is a problem most of many countries, that when the woman actually goes for the reporting at the police station, it is not acceptable immediately. Not only by her, but from the family, whether it is domestic violence or whether it is sexual abuse. So, and the second would be that I wanted to know my question was, do you have women police officers in your program of training? And I would be very interested also to work with BC on some kind of equally information and empowering the women police officers equally at that point. So these are the two questions I had. Thank you very much for giving me this.
Okay, thank you very much. The first question was about, let me answer the second question first. The women, we do have women police officers. We do have women police officers that we are training as well. So it's not just the men. It's just that there are more men in the police force than there are women. But we do have women police officers that are just as passionate, because they're women and they know what it is to be violated. They understand it and they've seen a lot of it, because there's so many cases of abuse that they see every day. Now, as far as the family is concerned, the question you asked was if I'm right, the members of the family, sorry, do you want to say it again?
I could repeat that normally it is seen in most of the developing countries, and I do come from that, that when the family goes at the police station to register the FIR, and as you said, is there this a problem that normally the police first thing is that it is not so easy to register the complaint?
Definitely, when
you are facing,
it is a big problem when the family goes to, it can be, not it is, I won't say it is always, it can be a big problem when they go to report cases. Even in advanced countries, to prove a rape case can be very, very, very difficult. So when you now approach a police officer or a police station where they don't have any empathy for women to report the cases, they'll put you up with the questions they ask you. What was the girl doing with the man? Was she properly dressed? Or they can actually suggest that if the family brings the perpetrator, they can actually suggest, okay, go and settle amongst yourselves, which is not nice at all. And a lot of that is happening in the society, where, especially when we have men in big places or influential men assault women and the case is reported, they either intimidate the family, intimidate the victim, or sometimes it even tears families apart, because the father may be saying, please don't make noise, don't bring attention to my family members, I don't bring a bad name. Because for some people it is a stigma. They don't understand that when somebody violates you, when somebody does something to you, you are not the one to carry the burden of what that person has done to you. You don't have to feel ashamed for somebody else's actions. You need to understand that that person is the one that should feel the shame, not you. You're a victim. You're a victim. But the thing is, we just feel, well, we need to cover up, we need to hide. We don't want people to know what has happened to us. And sometimes the mother can say, no, please, oh, nobody's going to marry my daughter in the future. If you come out and you start saying now somebody has raped her, or if it's a family member, you can tear the family apart. They'll be like, oh, you said my brother raped your child. I mean, so many cases, so many cases like that. And then, of course, the police themselves can say, look, this thing is not an important. We're dealing with serious issues here. You're coming to talk to us about rape. You know, it's a huge problem. But like I said, it's not insurmountable.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Bisi, do we have time for one more question for Her Excellency? Okay, I think Her Excellency is saying that she has to go. Yes, okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Dr. Bisi, I think you're on mute. I can't.
Bisi, before you go on, there's another hand raised, Reverend Mrs. I can't see her name, Eunice.
Yeah, I can't see that name too. I saw it before then.
Do you have a question for
I can see it now. Yeah. Maybe Reverend not. Mrs. Eunice Zion. This.
Or maybe maybe it's a mistake. Bisi,
don't worry, it was a mistake. Sorry.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Thank you, Reverend. Thank you.
Okay, Kenechukwu, you've got
There's
your hand
another hand raised. Kenechukwu. Yeah.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Your Excellency, good evening to you too. I had already typed it in the chat box, but since we're having an opportunity to speak, I just wanted to commend you on the effort so far, and then maybe by way of learning practice or borrowing from others. I am representing the UN Women Country Rep, and I'm aware of the governor's wives meeting you're having, because UN Women is also having that meeting with you as well. But I just wanted to mention that in Lagos State, we had visited, because of our Spotlight Initiative project and dealing with the violence against women and girls. And so we had visited the police stations, and we're right now developing what we call a referral pathway, and is domiciled at the Ministry of Justice through the DSVRT, that's for the Domestic Violence Response Team. And so the referral pathway is something that encompasses all the key stakeholders as far as the response when it comes to domestic violence or any form of GBV is concerned. You have the police, the health ministry, the Ministry of Women and Children Affairs, however it is named. then you have the Justice Department or Ministry for prosecution, then you have police and relevant security agencies. So the idea is to make sure that, and then CSOs, of course, so that because you also have that oversight and balance from members of the private sector, that's where the CSOs come in. So I'm just asking, now that your government has approved and inaugurated a family support unit, which Lagos also has set up, is there this kind of provision? Are you looking towards that to be able to ensure that affected persons or survivors have this kind of support? Is there, and for the training of police officers, are there going to be specific gender officers relevant to these issues? Will there be sufficient privacy? Because that's another critical thing, to protect the identities and persons of survivors who have to report these issues. As there is, because like what we discovered in Lagos, there's no separate place for the police station we went to. There was no separate room or place for survivors to come to. They still have to come into the general police station. The issues still have to be entered into their general criminal register. There's nothing separate, and any and every police officer had access to that book. It's not something that is deliberately kept in the care of specified gender officers. So this is an anomaly we're working to correct under the Spotlight program. So I'm asking these questions and hoping that maybe we can also cross-learn and address these issues if they are not already in place. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Kenechukwu. I am afraid that Her Excellency has had to leave to attend the meeting which she was attending, and then took a break to attend the session. But I would suggest that hopefully the next speakers can take on board what you said and be able to answer you from their own place of operation, so to speak. Hope that's all right.
That's all right. Thank you very much, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Dr. Bisi, do you want to take it from here?
We can't hear you, BC.
Okay.
BC, we can't hear you. Okay, BC, do you want to send me a message via WhatsApp if you can hear me?
Okay. I would while we're waiting for Dr. Bisi to come back online, if I could just kindly ask Reverend Mrs. Eunice Zion to kindly, take us through her own experience, because I can see that she was uploading the stories from the two ladies that were very strong enough to share their story from a place of strength. So Reverend Mrs. Eunice, would you like to share with us your take on the very strong stories that were shared by Winifred and Antonia? Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Noye, for that privilege and opportunity. I'm sorry, I can't really share my video at the moment.
It's okay.
Hear my voice.
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry. It's really a great privilege to hear people speak up, in this kind of situations. Even in the Western world, it does happen. And people are scared or ashamed, embarrassed, intimidated into not speaking up. They just keep quiet and they go through it alone. It could be a man that is being victimized domestically. It could be a woman. But I'm as a midwife and as a minister of God as well, I've seen it from the two aspects of life, that victims of domestic violence, they're not really strong, and they're not able to, they're not brave enough to speak out. I've been in that kind of position years back, but I will say glory to God that I'm out of it and things have settled. But in the initial stage of when it actually happened, I would say 2 weeks exactly after my getting married to my husband. And as Christians, it was blamed on the devil and the spirituality of it, that there was a spiritual attack, which I didn't believe in. But at that time, I was made to believe that if I had prayed and, seek the face of the Lord, fast, and all sorts of things, that the problem will get solved. But when you were just married 2 weeks into your marriage, I could remember clearly that I was still excited, and my marriage certificate was still even in the handbag I took out the day it happened. So right there on the road where he parked the car and chased me down the road of that, I could laugh about it now. I ran for my dear life because he was like possessed. They wanted to kill me. So it was the neighbors on the, the way London is being lined up. You have roads and you have residential apartments all about the place. They were the one that called the police to say there's a young man chasing down the road, a young woman, and that woman is crying and shouting for help. So the police came, and the female police took me to one side and took him to, the male one took him to another side, and they were asking questions. And I heard him saying, but she's my wife, we just got married, and this is supposed to be a domestic affair, that whatever happened, we don't want the police or anybody to interrupt, because we've been told that we're now one and we should be able to settle our differences. Then I said, but you made it public. So if you knew that, why didn't you get home and sit her down and tell her what she's done wrong? Instead of you parking your car and chanting, you're going to kill her, you're going to do this, and you were chasing her down the street. I remember clearly that I took my marriage certificate out and my rings, and I put them on the bonnet of the car, and I walked away. And I was looking for the nearest bus stop to get to my cousin that lived very far, about 5 miles away from my place at that time. But in essence of all this, it continued to happen. And in between of the time when that thing started, it never stopped. But because I am a Christian, a strong one, and he too is a strong Christian, that's what the thing got into my head, like I was a bit confused and disorientated, like, if it is true that Christian marriage should be very strong and meaningful and happy, happily married up, what do they say? Married happily ever after. Why is mine not like that? Have I done something wrong? Have I sinned? Have I done something that God is punishing me through my marriage? That was what was in me. Then we start going to deliverances. That's where I'm coming from. The pastors in the church that time that were counseling us started recommending deliverance ministry for us. I will go to the female one, he will go to the male one. They will do the deliverance together with us. But things were getting more and more until somebody just took the chance and got behind me, because I won't tell anybody and I won't tell friends. And I started having miscarriages upon miscarriages. I didn't know why I wasn't getting pregnant far more than 5 months. And I lost several babies in between that violence, until this particular time that another person came into it, and this was the law. It was a person of the law. The moment he was warned that if he dare touch me again, because we to cut it short, we ended in the court, to be court of law, and they separated us. I was given an apartment with because in between the time when the whatever was happening, and he settled for a bit, maybe because I was pregnant finally with the first child. So he rested his flexing of muscle for no reason. And after a while, I was given an apartment, so I moved out. They actually said he was the one that was supposed to move out, but he said he was going to burn the house down with me in it if they dared do that to him.
Okay.
Because, and this house we were talking about, I'm not boasting, but I'm boastful in the Lord, but I put the down payment for the mortgage. Because when we,
Reverend Mrs., I'm so sorry, we're gonna have to stop there. I must say it was a beautiful story, but we are very courageous, and I hope that you'll be able to share more as we go along during the program. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Just to say that the demand didn't stop when we're talking about going to church and pray until the law set in. So that's where I want to come in. So always advise the woman or whoever you want to counsel to speak out and tell the authority of the land to invite the law in the matter, not the church. Because the church will keep on telling you to read Bible and pray.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm just going to call on my colleague, Funke. Funke, are you there?
I'm here.
Yes, if you could just kindly introduce the next speaker, please. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
First of all, I just want to say to everyone, apologies about the mishap. Dr. Bisi is working on what's going on with her laptop at the moment, the system. Okay, so our next speaker is Faye Makinde, sorry. She's the SSS Senior Specialist Assistant. I hope I got that right. And the program under the GBV program. And she's also the daughter of Her Excellency, the First Lady of Oyo State. So, Faye, could I ask you to please come up and no, you're the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your introduction, Funke. And thank you to all of the previous speakers. I would like to observe all protocols and appreciate everyone sharing their story. So I would like to send the regards from Her Excellency First Lady of Oyo State. She was unable to be here, but thought it was imperative that her voice and some of the work that we have been doing was represented today. And as a Senior Special Assistant on gender-based violence, I'm looking forward to sharing some of the learnings that we've had, the experiences that we've had over the past few months and years, as well as the work we've been able to do with the Governor's Wife Forum. And I would also like to acknowledge Her Excellency First Lady of Ogun State and appreciate her sharing her experience, and look forward to continue to work with her. And I know the Office of the First Lady appreciates the work they're doing in Ogun State and looks forward to working with them. So I don't know if I'm able to share my screen, so I'm just going to request from the host to share my screen to have that access.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
You have access now.
Thank you. And I'll be sharing a short presentation just to speak to some of the ways that we've dimensioned the work on gender-based violence in Oyo State, as well as some of the learnings that we've had. So I believe you guys should be able to see my screen. And
yes, we can see.
Okay. And the presentation should be coming up. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. And I wanted to speak to how we think about gender-based violence in Oyo State and what constitutes gender-based violence. So we've actually dimensioned it to include all forms of rape, sexual assault, physical assault, female gender mutilation, human trafficking, and denial of resource and opportunities to women. And given that, that has informed some of the initiatives we've taken over the past year. So there was the inauguration of the Oyo State Rapid Response Team on Sexual and Gender-Based Violence in March of 2020. After this initial inauguration, the First Lady, Her Excellency Tamina Ominini Makinde, thought it was important to meet with grassroots representatives and was able to collect representatives from all 68 local government areas in the state. And through that initial meeting, there was the launch of the Speak Up banner and sensitization campaign, which was a way to begin grassroots mobilization and improve sensitization overall throughout the state. I'll go into that a bit later. There's also the commissioning of the Oyo State Family Court building. So this is a court specifically related to domestic and family issues that we believe will help provide legal support to the fight against sexual and gender-based violence. Another important breakthrough is the introduction of the 615 toll-free reporting hotline for gender-based violence, which has allowed for direct reporting of women and also anonymous reporting to the state. There was also a celebration for International Widows Day that spotlighted some of the people who are most at risk for gender-based violence, as well as the International Girl Child Day celebration. And ongoing, there's the establishment of counseling units in all the 68 LGAs and LCDs across the state. So as you can see, it's been quite an active year. And I think speaking to the First Lady of Ogun State, her experience, this focus came from a national level, but also as we saw the rising cases through the pandemic, we wanted to ensure that we continued ongoing support. So that really was the kickoff of that first grassroots movement, and then the ongoing follow-up through the Speak Up campaign and many of the other activities that I just spoke to. So here is some of photos from the grassroots organizations. As you can see, it's not just at the center in Ibadan. We have people from all across the state working at the grassroots level, especially the wives of the chairman of the local governments and LCDs who served as our grassroots representatives, and were able to create mobilization campaigns and sensitization campaigns in their own local government. So this was really important to helping people all across the state be able to understand the impacts, both emotionally and mentally and physically, of sexual and gender-based violence. Moving on to the Speak Up campaign that was run across the state. This included banners as well as social media campaigns, along with, these are some screenshots at the bottom of a video that was commissioned in English, Yoruba, and Pidgin English to speak to the need for increased reporting on domestic violence and rape, as well as including the 615 number that I mentioned. That hotline was also spotlighted in this video, and that was shared across the state on television, as well as radio campaigns that spotlighted some of the resources available. So we are really in the early phases of creating understanding and acknowledgement of the issue, and are going to continue to do so. There was also, like I mentioned, because we dimension gender-based violence, not just to include rape and sexual assault, but also kind of the marginalization and removal of resources for certain at-risk population. We found it was important through the International Widows Day celebration and the International Girl Child Day celebration to spotlight these at-risk groups, speaking specifically to widows who tend to be marginalized in their society. They're not offered the same opportunities. They often have difficulty raising their children or seeking economic empowerment. And we thought it was important to provide resources through food donations and give outs, as well as encouragement from the First Lady, along with a discussion on some of the issues that they may experience as widows, and providing a listening ear to them, and let them know that they're not alone, and that the First Lady is working to end this gender-based violence. In addition, there was an International Day of the Girl Child where hundreds of school-age girls came together. On the bottom right of my screen, you'll see representatives from Kotex who partnered with us to provide sanitary napkins to the young girls, as well as let them know that there's this concept of sexual and gender-based violence, and encourage them to speak up about it and share their experiences with trusted advisors. So both of these initiatives were outstanding, well attended, and we look forward to continuing them in future years. So just there's a lot of text, but please bear with me as I kind of go through some of the impact that we've made. So the state rapid response team has actually been able to attend to over 80 cases of sexual and gender-based violence since its inauguration. The rallies and sensitization campaigns occurred in all 68 local governments, and there's a public declaration. This is actually really recent news that we're discussing with the Women of Ministry Affairs, and the Ministry of Women Affairs, sorry. And there was a public declaration by local religious and traditional leaders against genital mutilation. So this is important. As we discussed, this cannot just be a top-down initiative. There needs to be buy-in from all of the leaders at the local level. And so having the traditional and religious leaders come out and say, in our community, if there is female genital mutilation, you will not only have the law to deal with, but you will also have the backing of our community and our traditions. We no longer support this. And in fact, we are actually actively denouncing this. So there's actually been a certification through the Ministry of Women Affairs and Ministry of Health for local government areas and leaders who are doing this. So through this certification campaign has really encouraged more local government to do that, and we're expecting additional 2 later this week to actually speak out against gender-based violence. There's social, some of the findings we found through a report that we have now submitted to the federal government. There are social and cultural religious barriers that remain an issue to reporting. There's also inadequate logistics and information that presents a barrier to swift response and intervention, and legal support, ongoing legal support is necessary. So we're looking to kind of in the next steps be able to address some of these issues, specifically around the proposed Oyo State 2021 budget that will include an allocation for sexual and gender-based support and outreach. So we're very excited for that. We're looking towards the ratification of that budget. There's also been ongoing coordination through the Nigerian Governors Wise Forum on gender-based violence, so the NGW-GBV. And we're also looking to hopefully launch market, crash, and skill acquisition centers to empower women and address the root cause, which a lot of times boils down to power and economic lack of economic empowerment. And we're hoping to launch international partnerships. So I appreciate everyone who has shared their contact information in the chat. And this forum is, one of the ways that we hope to continue an ongoing national and international dialogue. And kind of speaking to all of this, I wanted to highlight kind of a specific story that shows that this is something that is not just a local issue, it's an international global effort. I know many people may have seen kind of the viral photos and story about an Oyo State indigene who was trafficked in Lebanon and was unable to reach home. I think they were selling her passport on a Facebook marketplace. This is the type of human trafficking and impact that we see affecting us not just in the state, but across the world. And so we're actually really excited to say that they were able to repatriate those women and have them come in back to the state, and they're now being given support to be reintegrated into society. So that's another success story that we're excited to share. And like I mentioned, all of this is not done alone. The First Lady's office works with the Ministry of Women Affairs and Health, as well as international organizations. So I'm happy to take any questions or comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. That was really good. Yeah, that was really good. I've just seen some messages on the chat. They would like the hotline, the referral hotline in Oyo State. If you could kindly type it into the chat, please.
Yes, it's super simple, 615, that's it. So 615,
okay.
So anytime, it's a toll-free number, so you're able to call that and use it to report. That is also in the videos. I'm happy to share that with the organizers, as well as share the hotline, but 615, I've typed it there in the chat.
Thank you very much. And then there's a question from Alaba Ehidero. And she's saying is, pardon me, is what is Oyo State doing to ensure collaboration with local CSOs and coalitions that have been working on GBV and have been proving records and experience to assist the government tackle GBV?
Yes, so I think you're absolutely spot on with that question. We're currently working with several CSOs, especially at the local government level. So oftentimes these are localized organizations made up of private sector and nonprofit people. So we're working with them, especially in collaboration with Sensitization of Market Women and Men's Group. One of the ways that we've been able to do that is through the representatives at the 68 local governments. So oftentimes, as you know, with government, there can be a lot of bureaucracy. So we want to make sure that no matter where you are in the state, you can have a direct contact person. And through the campaigns that were launched by those grassroots organizers, there is an ability to have a direct contact point at the local government level, as well as community leadership supported by the Ministry of Women Affairs and the Office of the First Lady.
Okay, thank you very much. We will soon be wrapping up, but that was a really good presentation. I did take notes on the grassroots movement and Speak Up, and how effective has that been in Oyo State with the drive that Her Excellency is doing with regards to GBV, because it seems very, very holistic and really encouraging as an initiative.
Yes, I think that initiative was really successful, especially in just being able to get the word out there that this is a concern. This is a real issue. This is not something that we are turning our backs to as a state. Yeah. And that initiative was able to actually influence the allocation that we're hoping to have in the 2021 budget. So it's really working on both levels, being able to work at the grassroots levels through that Speak Up campaign, but following that up with support and funding from the state and and in collaboration with CSOs and other NGOs as well. So it's great to have that dynamic of balance on both the grassroots level. And one thing I will note is it was important to do it in several languages and in a way that can resonate with those that are in the community.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Faye. I can just see there's a lady Doreen who would like to, connect with you and what you do, as she understands that your approach is a very holistic one and would be helpful to some communities, for example, Cameroon. I'm just but thank you so much for your time. If there are any more questions we'll be taking during the program, I'm going to hand over now to Dr. Bisi Adebayo. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noye, and thank you so much, Ms. Feyi Makinde. What a very excellent presentation. She's my namesake, so she very, very special to me. I can assure you she has the ears of both the governor and the wife of the governor. So don't think that whatever we are saying here will not get to them. She will, even without any protocols, they will get the message directly.
Wow.
So
Nothing.
yes, so we now move on to the next couple of polls, because I think we are running out of time so that we can keep within the scheduled time. We apologize for this, and I also apologize for the technical issues that I had. So can we have the next two polls together before we go on to our next speakers?
So there's just one poll left.
Okay, sorry.
And it's the barriers to gender equality. So it doesn't look as if it's appropriate at this time.
Oh, okay. So we can move on?
Yes.
All right. So at this point, I would like to call on Ms. Fumilayo Ashaolu. She is the presiding judge on Court Justice. For those of you in Nigeria, this is a reality show, very similar to the ones we watch on the American channels. And she will be speaking to us about the laws and the reality, bridging the gaps. Ms. Ashaolu, are you here with us today? Oh, yeah, she's here, but you know, Fumi. I hope he's not having problems.
Okay. Yeah, no, we're just trying to unmute. Well, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. And we're all gathered over domestic violence. That's gender violence against women. And for me, that's just violence against women in whatever form and in whatever manner. A lot of the types of violence against women are touched upon today. So I'll literally leave those aside and try to go on to those that I believe that have not been touched upon. For instance, religion plays a lot of role when it comes to gender violence. Even the law itself, as much as we have a lot of statutes and laws that promote violence against women, there are still some that are retrogressive in nature. For instance, the penal code that is applicable in the northern part of the country, it encourages and legalizes corrective beating of wife. That is, a husband can beat the wife, the child, servant, but as long as it does not cause a grievous harm. I don't believe this should be. And we need to do a lot of sanitization. People have to be conscious of their rights, especially a girl child who will eventually grow up to become a woman. And that takes us back to illiteracy. A girl child must have access to education. I believe is the foundation. When a child is educated, automatically you are conscious of your rights. And it works positively because you are empowered financially too. Whether you go into business or you work with your certificates, you are better off. A girl child is better off being educated. And when we talk about religion, there's some religion that still promotes underage marriage, forced marriage from traditional culture and norms, because you still have people that their parents still, they hand them over to their husband, they choose husband for them, even this present generation. So we need to work on the community. we need to work on people's orientation, the tradition and custom that works against women's interest, especially when it comes to gender violence. We really have to work on that. And as much as we have different types of violence, even we have stalking, now we have online stalking, which is taken to be gender violence as well now. The issue is, all these women, do they have access to justice? That's when I'm talking about the law and the reality. We know the law is there, but in reality, we have the statutory law, we have the customary law, and we have the religion by the side as well. And most cases, what I discovered, because with the justice court, I realized that when matrimonial issues comes up and we have issues of anger management, violence, and a lot of other things, you discover that most cases, they've not even been to the police station. They work on their maybe imam or pastor or family members to intervene. It's when they can't see any changes that they now decide. And even when they write their claim, if I read what they write, by the time they come to the open court, they are saying different things entirely because they are scared. They know it's going to go on air. And people, we all know that victims of rape, sexual abuse, they get, people still discriminate against them. We are not that developed to that level that we accept. Actually, I'm talking about the rural areas. The urban, the educated ones, they speak out now. More people do speak out, but we still need to really work on, because at the rural area, most of them, they don't even have the courtrooms. They have to travel to the urban area to have access to justice. Then when they go to the police station, I've had instances when you go there and what they just tell them is, this is private issue, this husband and wife matter, you should go and settle at home. It still goes back to the orientation of a male child. Because these are policemen, they know the law, they know what to do. But the influence they've had from the tradition and custom over the years growing up, that still overshadows their mindset, such that that's what they tell them. They just tell you, you go and settle at home and everything will work out. And another issue that we have with the policemen is the fact that they don't take it serious unless it becomes a grievous harm. And it's not really, they are not working in a preventive manner. We shouldn't be. If you tell them, no, a spouse has killed a wife or the husband, they rush over there, or maybe there is acid bath, something grievous. But when you just go in to complain, no, my husband just beat me or keeps beating me up, there's battery, there's beating, they never ever take it serious. So these have to be addressed. It all goes to orientation. I'm glad Ogun State is doing a lot right now on this, because the Majesty just mentioned the fact that they've been working along with their police officers, to address all this, so which is quite commendable. Then with the long delay that we have in the court as well, it sure discourages victims from going to court, because eventually when they end up in court, the fact that they have to narrate this sensitive story in the open court discourages them. And the second thing is the fact that court proceedings, they are considered to be public documents. They are always there. Anybody can have access to it. So I believe we really have to work on it. Government has to set up a unit such that when you want to handle gender violence cases, you make your complaint direct to this unit. And within maximum 72 hours, they should be able to come up in court. And I believe that the procedure should probably be at the chambers, not at the open court, such that the victim would feel very free and be confident to speak out about what actually transpired. Because even right now, with the law in Nigeria, it's only the victim that can lodge a complaint. It's the only one that can initiate an action. So if I have a neighbor now that is being abused, even if I call the police officer, if the police refuse, they intervene, and I'm agitating that the matter should go to court, until the victim accept and decide that she's ready or he is ready to go ahead to court. There's nothing anybody can do. It's something else that we need to address, such that is going to limit and encourage should encourage a lot of victims to be able to approach the court to get justice done. Then the high level of corruption in Nigeria, police inclusive, is another thing that discourages victims from going to making a report at the police station, because they believe that when they go there, if the other party is worthier or ready to dispose money to them, and everything just goes on there, and that will be the end. You never hear anything about the case. They just tell you, go and settle your case at home. This is purely domestic matter and everything. They become counselors. That's justice. They become counselors. And the Sharia courts and the Sharia law, I think we really need to work on it, because that's where we still have situation where you can have a 13 years old girl being given out in marriage. I'm talking about in the north. And at the same time, we still have the issue of forced marriage. I don't think this should be so. I know the issue of female generation has been addressed, but then it's still ongoing. So we have to be conscious of our environment. And when we realize places that all these issues are going on, we have to look for a way that we can bring awareness to the people, so that there will be a positive change in all these areas, And there is always this misconception that women are weaker sex. I don't really think so. The issue is, I believe women are not given equal opportunity with men, either at the workplace or even being in bed with the idea while growing up. And we have the issue of the men's ego. As a young boy, you are made to believe that because you are a boy, in fact, you should not even cry, ordinary to express your emotion. So they bottle up so much at times, and it shouldn't be so. The Constitution of Nigeria and a lot of other laws has made room in support of solution and abatement of gender violence. But in reality, we still have a lot of custom, tradition, religious belief that is working against it. And I believe the minute we can address this, take them from religious points, customary and tradition view, then the laws itself, those that still have, like I mentioned, the penal code. Once we can address all these, then, and we probably set up a monitoring team to monitor the police station and even the correctional centers, that's the prison institution in Nigeria, to find out those that are involved and let them have speedy access to justice. It will go a long way to assist a girl child and a woman at the same time. I mean, I'm conscious of the fact that we are the time frame that we have now,
Yes, thank
that
you.
we're running out of time. So
Yeah.
I'd love to put a stop to my presentation at this point in time.
I'm sure
Thank you.
some questions will come up later on. I'm very glad you
Yes.
touched on the cultural and the traditional aspect of it, because there are so many other forms of violence against women that we really didn't focus on. We really deliberated too much on violence and sexual assault, but there is female genital mutilation, like you mentioned, as well as the early girl-child marriage, which is violence against women, and those are fueled by societal values. I would like to quickly now move on now to a global perspective of all that we've been talking about this afternoon. I'd like to call on Ms. Kenechukwu Mbajiogu. She's representing the country rep of UN Women in Nigeria. Kenechukwu she has a legal background with 10 years post-call experience. She's worked as a legal research fellow with the OHCHR, which is the Office of the UN Commissioner on Human Rights. And she has very keen interest in human rights and gender equality. She's currently a program analyst with the UN Women, and she's also part of the legislative and institutional strengthening on the joint EU-UN Spotlight initiative to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls in Nigeria. Kenechukwu, over to you, and thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Kenechukwu. Is she here?
She might have dropped off, actually.
Okay. Well, while we're waiting for her, I don't know what happened because I know she was with us earlier on. I was hoping to leave our next speaker till the last so that she can cap up and wrap up everything we've been talking about. But, we don't want to spend much time waiting for Kenechukwu. When she comes back, she can take over. I would like to introduce Dr. Adetong Faloye. She'll be talking about bridging gaps in gender-based violence from a mental health perspective. She's a physician specialized in psychiatry, based in Ibadan with the hospital there. And her interests include women, young people, adults, and forensic mental health. She's the Deputy Director of Women's Mental Health of the ASIDO Foundation, and very passionate about mental health. She's an advocate, lending her voice to mental health education and promotion in schools, religious organizations, and the media in various forms. Our desire is for a Nigeria where conversations around mental health are commonplace, such that no one will be ashamed to talk and discuss their mental health challenges. I would like to call on Adetong now. We all know that a lot of this problem results in mental health issues that people bottle in, some because they are introverts and cannot bring themselves to talk about it, some out of fear of shame and stigmatization, they keep it all bottled in. Adetong will be able to elaborate on that and tell us about what she's doing in Oyo State, Ibadan specifically.
Thank you, everyone. Good evening, everyone. It's been an enlightening discourse. I would like to appreciate Dr. Bisi for the opportunity. I've been particularly inspired by the courage of those who shared their stories earlier and all the other conversations we have had with regards to the things going on in Ogun State, Lagos State, and the legal perspective to this issue. I would have loved to share my screen, but I'm having a bit of difficulty from my end. So I think I'll just proceed. So my interest is in talking about the mental health implications, the mental health perspective of all of these issues. And we cannot talk about gender-based violence without talking about the psychological import of gender-based violence. So the thing about gender-based violence is that it is an act of violence that is committed against an individual or a group based on their gender. And violence against women and girls contribute a huge chunk to gender-based violence. So the bulk of gender-based violence has to do with violence against women and girls. We know that boys and men also experience violence, but to a lesser proportion than women and girls. So our focus here is women and girls. And violence against women and girls talks about any act of gender-based violence that results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering to the woman or a girl, and includes threats of such acts. Just a threat is considered violence against women and girls. So we need to understand what it means. Coercion or arbitrary deprivation of liberty. It is not just beating or abuse. If a woman or a girl is deprived of her liberty, it is considered to be a form of violence. And whether it occurs in public or private life, it is a form of violence. And let us also know that it is a human right violation. Women's rights are human rights. It is widespread, it is persistent, it is devastating. It can occur to any woman, irrespective of her age, her level of education, and social status. Many survivors do not report because of shame, of stigma, the silence, and the injustice that they experience, even when they know they would report. They are mostly shut down, they are not believed, their stories are not believed. And it can be physical, sexual, or psychological. Types include intimate partner violence. A number of people have talked about intimate partner violence. And it includes marital rape as well. Sexual violence and harassment. Human trafficking is a form of gender-based violence. Female genital mutilation and child marriage. And we should know that violence against women and girls occur in all places. On the street, in the workplace, at home, in schools, even in religious settings. So it appears that the girl, child, or the woman is an endangered species because they are just hard pressed on every side by various acts of violence. And these are the reasons why we need to pay a lot of attention to this issue. How huge is this problem? The UN reports that 243 million women and girls were abused by an intimate partner in the past year. And as a result of the lockdown, we are experiencing what they have called the shadow pandemic. Because since the lockdown started in various parts of the world, an increase in the reporting of violence against women, especially domestic violence, has been observed through use of hotlines and all of that. So I'm glad that the Governors Forum is looking at this issue much more critically than ever before at this time. So what exactly is the relationship between mental health and violence against women and girls? I would say that the relationship is bidirectional. The tendency for us is to look at it in a unidirectional manner, thinking about how this violence affects women directly. However, the other direction is that women with severe mental illnesses also have an increased chance of being victims of violence. And they are reported to be 6 times more likely to experience it in their lifetime than a woman or a girl that does not have a mental health condition. So those are the 2 ways that women and girls can have mental health problems that is associated with violence. But before I go further, I need to define what mental health is. This is a word that has become an everyday word in the last few months, particularly in Nigeria, because of the pandemic, because of the NSAS protest. Many more people have become more mentally aware. So people talk a lot about mental health these days, but what exactly it is? It is a state of well-being in which, as an individual, you're able to achieve your potential, you can cope with the challenges of life, you can work productively and fruitfully, and you can contribute meaningfully to your society. So imagine a girl child or a woman who has experienced one form of violence or the other. Without a doubt, to various proportions and degrees, that kind of girl child or woman may not be able to achieve her potential, may have difficulty coping with other challenges that come our way. They have problems working productively, and they all have problems contributing meaningfully to the society. So you can begin to look at the broad spectrum of the impact of violence on women and girls, their personal achievement, their social interactions, their occupational achievement, and their ability to even deal with other challenges that come their way. I have seen many a woman or lady who have been abused sexually, intimate partner violence, and all of that. And you will see that they are not usually the same people. You heard the story, the first story by the convener of Bruised but Not Broken. I think Mrs. Ojenagon, I don't quite remember the pronunciation of her name. Her family, her children were not getting the best of her. That's a mental health import. Her children were not getting the best of her because she was suffering from depression at different points in her life whilst she was supposed to be raising a kid. And she was able to link the depression to the experience of violence she had as a child. Even though that may not have been sufficient in of itself, but definitely that was a harbinger for the depressive disorder that she had. So the mental health implications for violence on women and girls could be seen as immediate or long-lasting. And both can even occur in the same woman or girl that suffers this violence. So the immediate things include things like shame, fear, stigma, blame. You know, these are mental health implications, I hope we know. A lady feels ashamed when she's sexually assaulted. The woman feels stigmatized when she's sexually assaulted. They blame themselves. They begin to think maybe it was something they did or something they wore or something they said to their spouse that made the spouse beat them, hit them. I mean, and it's rather than see the abuser as the person who deserves the blame, they blame themselves. And a cycle of self-blame can lead to poor self-esteem, can also be associated with depression. And I would like to say here that depression is not just, I am not happy. Depression is way, way deeper than transient periods of sadness or unhappiness. Depression refers largely to a mood problem that is persistent and a persistently low mood that is excessive in comparison with the individual circumstances, that is not explainable by the occurrences in the person's life. And it is also accompanied by other things such as loss of interest in the things that they enjoy, getting tired easily, feelings of hopelessness, difficulty with concentration, feelings of guilt, feelings of suicidal thoughts, self-harm, you know. So it's a myriad of things that constitute depression, not what people think depression is, that I'm just feeling sad. No, it's a myriad of things, and it has been recognized as the number one reason for disability that affects people's ability to work productively all over the world. And it is known that violence against women and girls is also a contributor to depression globally. Other things that women and girls who experience violence can have are anxiety disorders. Anxiety disorders are not just, I am afraid. They are more persistent, long-lasting, affecting the woman's ability to function in everyday life and in the workplace, as well as social domains. They can also resort to excessive alcohol use as a means of coping. I have seen a few women who became what you would call alcoholics, even though we prefer not to use that word, but for the purpose of this audience, who became addicted to alcohol because that was the way they knew to cope with the various, with the experience of violence they have had in their lives. And so, apart from dealing with the direct psychological effect of the violence, They also now have to deal with the alcohol use problems or even problems from other kinds of illicit drugs. And I would like to add that we should not think that women don't have drug use problems. Women do. A lot of women are beginning to have more problems with alcohol, more problems with illicit drugs. It's not just a man thing. Some women suffer from what we call post-traumatic stress disorders, and this can be distressing, in which they will be re-experiencing the event. They will have intrusive memories of that event via dreams, or when they come across places or circumstances that remind them of that experience, they can begin to experience the event again. Sometimes they have avoidance, such that they will avoid thinking or talking about the event because of the emotion it generates in them. And then they may avoid situations or circumstances that will remind them of the event. And that could also be maladaptive. Sometimes women, they could also have what we call hypervigilance, hyperarousal. They become excessively alert to noise, events, circumstances, and you'll be wondering, why is this person always having battles that are uncalled for? It could be because they have a post-traumatic stress disorder. They may go on to even have depression alongside the PTSD. And beyond PTSD, depression, anxiety, some of them may go on to develop what we call psychotic disorders. Maybe not simply because of the violence, it's either sexual assault or rape or whatever, but usually that experience of violence is linked with those disorders that they eventually develop. And this is why addressing this issue of violence is our collective responsibility as individuals and as organizations. So how can a person recognize a potential abuser? Because most women, particularly those who experience intimate partner violence, they miss the signs during courtship. Somebody mentioned that in the chat room. So a potential abuser might exhibit features of jealousy, and you would think it is love, it's being protective. They might have a controlling behavior. They want to control where you go to. They want to know every single one of your movements. I mean, you're a full-grown adult, for goodness sake. Why should a partner or somebody you're in a romantic relationship with want to know every single movement of yours? They may isolate you. I remember someone I know, I mean, this person is educated. I mean, I'm trying not to give us too much details here because I don't have her permission. But some way, her husband just isolated her. When the event became, when the experience of intimate partner violence became extreme for her, for one reason or the other, I had to go to the house. And I asked her, who knows where you live here? Interestingly, nobody knows where she lives. I was shocked. Anyway, so isolation, they isolate you from friends and family. They say terrible stuff about your friends, terrible stuff about your family, just to cut you off and put you locked in with them. Then they don't take responsibility for their actions. They blame it on other people. They blame it on problems. They are hypersensitive. They can use playful use. They can use playful use of force during sex. Those are red flags. They can use force during arguments. They make mean jokes. They will not communicate with you. I mean, I've heard stories of spouses who leave their wives and they will refuse to communicate with their wife for months. That's a form of violence. They would demonstrate provocative behavior with the opposite sex while their wives are around them. In conversations, in decision-making, they can ignore or exclude their partners. When they are angry, they can break objects. They can threaten violence. They are cruel to animals. They may have unrealistic expectations of their partner. These are some of the red flags of a possible abuser. The list is endless. I can't possibly exhaust it, but I just thought to highlight those ones because it is also important to be able to identify who a potential abuser is. So how do you heal? So I don't take much of our time. the first thing that anybody who has experienced any form of abuse, sexual abuse, domestic violence, psychological abuse, is to recognize that the fault is always on the abuser. That has been reiterated many times in this meeting. We should also understand that recovery and healing occurs at different rates for different people. Why? Because the experience and the interpretation of the experience differs from person to person. So it's not something you say, forget it, snap out of it, move on with your life. I think that those are insensitive comments to say to anyone who is experiencing or who has experienced violence in one form or the other. I mean, some people can move on. Yes, they will still have residues of the experience, but they may move on at a quicker rate than other people. Some people, it takes them months to years, but of course, they never forget the experience more often than not. So it is important to reconnect with self, to reconnect with others, to reconnect with the world. Ability to acknowledge and confront one's emotions. One of the things that a lot of people do when they experience any kind of violence, whether one-off or repeatedly, is that they lock in the emotions. And one of the ways people lock in the emotions is that they don't talk about it. And that's because religious and cultural sentiment discourage people talking about these things. So to be able to heal, talking about it is important. I have a friend who is a lawyer. I think she's on this forum. She runs a women's safe house. And 2 times a year, she does a storytelling session like we have done here tonight, where people share their stories. Now, we don't pressurize people to share their story. That's not good. People should be able to tell their story when they are ready. And just like it was said at the start, some people would speak from a place of pain. Others will speak from a place of healing. So, but it is important to be able to allow people to share their story without judging them. I think that as a people, we are judgmental. We're very quick to dismiss people's feelings and emotions and to judge them. I'm hoping that if there's any such a person here, moving forward from this conference, we would have learned how to listen to people. The word empathy has been repeatedly mentioned at this meeting. It is something we need to cultivate. Empathy is something we can learn. It is a skill that can be learned. Another thing is reconnection with others. One of the strongest support system anybody who has experienced violence requires is the support of family and friends. Unfortunately, it appears that family and friends are the greatest impediments to people's healing. Parents who don't believe the stories of their girls, of their daughters. Parents friends who will peddle your stories without, I mean, those are injurious and dangerous behavior. But more importantly, what we need to begin to do as family and friends of people who may have been victims or survivors of violence of any form is to be a strong support system. I mean, who else should be your support system than your own family? Yeah. But sometimes you find out that girls are molested by their uncles, like one of our storytellers mentioned, and parents will say they should not talk about it. They should not scatter the family. That family, but the singular act of molesting or incest is in and of itself has destroyed a family. So why should you now make the person, the victim or the survivor in this case, to now keep quiet as a means of protecting the family? You are damaging that individual further. You're not, why as a parent you should stand up and take up the courage to seek justice and address the situation appropriately. It is also important to reconnect with the world. One of the experiences that people who have experienced violence will be, it's as if it is the world against them. It seems to them as though they were earmarked for this. So they feel like everything has worked against them. Why should it be them? There must be some terrible jinx on them. There must be some demon on them. There must be some affliction on them. Why should it be them? And let us also remember that there's particularly for sexual assault and rape, is that when a person experiences sexual assault, they are more likely to experience it again and again. Although there are a group of people who that experience of sexual assault results into an aversion for sex. But there are also that majority that experience of sexual assault becomes the reason why they would they can experience it again, or they now become carefree about their sexual behavior. So we need to keep, so they need to reconnect with the world. What can you do? Physical health measures, take care of your injuries, prevent pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections. Unfortunately, our system doesn't really work. I have seen individuals who have suffered from this. They will be seen in the emergency room. The O&G doctor is poking his finger, trying to do a vaginal examination. The poor lady is crying. In the open area, they will just manage to put on screen. I mean, I have seen many that this is not tidy. So you can see that those are impediments to even getting the right kind of help. Make effort to eat healthy, take adequate rest. These are general factors. But more importantly, like has been said today, ask for help. Ask for help. Find a trusted family or friend. Join a reliable, helpful support group. I'm glad that the first speaker mentioned that they have a support group. The battle against this violence is everybody's collective responsibility. All sectors must join hands to address the various aspects. We need to make funding available for women organizations. My state, for example, does not have a state-owned safe house. If you find a safe that I am aware of, if you say they have hotline.
Sorry to butt in, Adeton, you have 2 minutes. Sorry to.
Oh, okay. So can I just finish in 3 minutes?
Please do. Thank you.
Yes. We talk about hotlines, and I think that's a good step in the right direction. But I was asking myself, if somebody who is experiencing violence calls the hotline, do you have a place to keep the person, or the person still has to go back to the abuser? That was the question that came to my mind. So we need safe houses. We need to ensure that these services are available for survivors. We need to declare that we have zero tolerance for gender-based violence as individuals, as organizations. And we need to have data so that we can improve the services. So I think that about covers it. I was going to give us a side attraction on breathing exercise because I think it came up, but I don't know if we should defer. Well, yeah.
I think I'll stop afterwards. Adeton, let's do that afterwards so that we can take one or two questions now. I can see 2 hands raised.
Yes, Dr. Bisi.
Let's take those 2 hands.
Yeah, Dr. Bisi, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, we've got, I just want to confirm that we do have 2 hands raised up, Abisi and John Akinola, but Abisi was first.
Okay, thank you. Actually, it's not more of a question, but it's to buttress on what they're saying. The speakers are fantastic. And I was going to ask a few questions, but Mrs. Ashaolu actually addressed them. And thanks to Adeton, because we always look at one direction when it comes to violence, but I'm happy today that a lot of different forms of violence is being addressed. And my question is, because I've typed it on there that apart from the police force, is it possible we have coordinators? Do we have mentors? Do we have different community working in partnership with community experts like the last speaker? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abby. I think we have Dr. Akinola's hands raised up.
And we also have, hello, John. Dr. John.
Hello.
Go on, please.
Good evening, everybody. Without any shadow of doubt, this has been a great meeting, quite enlightening. If I'm not mistaken, I think I'm the male voice on this forum. And that is where my point comes in. I know gender-based violence is more, there's more inclination. There's no doubt about that. But I think, as much as we talk about the victims, we need to talk about the perpetrators, who are mostly, and live in a forum like this, we need to bring out people who I call of male figures who can, serve as a role model to other male, as well as protection to the female genders. Like one of the speakers said, culturally, a lot of things tend towards, once you're a boy or you're a man, there are some things that are naturally believed to be on your side. But I believe that men should come out to lend their support and show good example to the society on how can be protected either at work or at home. We need that documentary or in either Namibia or somewhere taught how to take care of babies when their wives are in the kitchen. Some of them had to back the baby with traditional African way. Some of those men, they've never lend a hand to their wife, once in their lifetime. So that training trained about 1,000 men. So I believe that men has a role to play, in as much that most of the GBV we're talking today is perpetrated by men, but I think men still also have a role to play. Second thing is about education, especially in public places. Even if you are to put up billboards in hospitals, in schools, on the, picture, they say speak, million, a million times more. When people see the picture, women being abused and, and things that have to be done to prevent it from happening, I believe it will pass in the message to a lot of people who don't even know what that meant, like the other isolation, emotional abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse to women. My contribution basically, in order not to take our time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Dr. Bisif, I just want to point out that we have 2 hands raised. Thank you very much, Dr. Akinola, very much appreciated. Katie, would you like to share with us your question or your contribution?
Yes,
Katie?
Thank you very much. Yes, please. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I really love this gathering. And for some years now, 3 years, we've been waging war against rape. And we've come to the point where we linked rape. We now have a project we call ASHA, assault, suicide, and we have homelessness and addiction issues, all linked together to violence against women. The most disheartening part of it is that we don't have any shelter that I know of in your state. This is important. And we've used a lot of media publicity to disseminate lectures. We've given more than 198 lectures in those 3 years. But what I've observed, and that is our next stage now for 2021, is that there's a need to groom young people. So we're putting together programs for people on campus. We are on campus, and to train young men. We call it the project Safe Together, so we can create a new culture. I think beyond talking, we must begin to engineer the culture for safety. Prevention of violence against women is salvation. Women have to concentrate to train and groom next generations. So a lot of issues that I have with young people, suicide ideation and all those mental health issues, I have linked to violence against women. So it is time for all of us to come together. That's why I'm asking for networking. We must work together. So many people have done so much. In fact, when I was listening to Feji, I was surprised at some of those work advertised. Take time for all women to organize, to save the girl child, to save women. Many are dying in silence. So I will call for more collaboration between everybody and maybe periodic coming together, maybe a quarter each year, so we get to share our experiences and strengthen one another to fortify our resolution against violence against women. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Katie. That was brilliant. Well done. That was so spot on. I just want to point out that BDG has got, there's a link on the chat area where we've got like the Google form. So if you could kindly fill that Google form. It's been posted twice by the facilitators. And the idea is to continue the networking, the supporting, the reaching out, just as you have rightly mentioned, as well as other contributors. Quickly, we have a hand
Can I say
raised up.
something before you call on the next speaker?
Yes, please.
Yes, Katie, we would love to connect with you. That's a very good one on the collaboration. We've picked that up. It's very important, as well as the periodic coming together. I think this is something that we really need to do so that we find out what is happening within the network. You know, that's the lack of safety, shelter, safety houses. It's really something we all should also work on together. So please, if you don't mind, if you, reach out to us so that we can get your contact so that we can take this further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've filled my form.
Good.
Thank you.
Oh, well done. Well done. Thank you, Katie. Well done. Thank you very much. That's brilliant. I just want to quickly mention a contribution from Remy Digbe, and it says, just to point out that men too experience violence from women and are ashamed to disclose. And she goes on to say it's very important to have support groups that would work closely with victims. There should be a place of safety for victims. Thank you very much, Remy. I'm going to now call on Abiola Crown. Abiola Crown, would you like to share with us your question or your contribution? Abiola Crown.
Thank you very much. And I want to deeply appreciate the convener of this meeting. It's like anywhere I hear something like this, I just jump in. Please, just two things very shortly. I'm speaking from Aberdeen, UK.
Okay.
I'm so grateful to the woman of God that share about the church. Myself, I'm a survivor of domestic abuse. I'm an ordained minister of the gospel. I'm married to a pastor, so I know what he's talking about. Please, I want to plead with us. In our collaboration, let's please kindly see how much we can do to get the church leaders involved. Because the church, faith community in particular, is what we can't go anywhere without them. No matter what we do with these women, when they get to the church, we are stalked. I'm talking from experience. But of late, because we also have an organization here called Time to Heal, and actually the church is our own focus. So what we began to do is we began to train pastors. I was very surprised. Each time I come to Nigeria, we train pastors. We've trained up to about 100 pastors now in Nigeria. And many of them, they really don't know what to do. So if we begin to target them and get them on our side, not minding how much we have been wounded and marginalized, the story is so long, we will get better results. Because now when I'm going home, they are the one who organized meeting for me to come and talk to their church. But I had to get them first. Then secondly, please, Mas, another point I want us to look at is this shelter of a sin. I know that, Nigeria, when we are talking about shelter, please let's also look at what works for every country. So it works right for us here you're not afraid or wherever you keep shelter here, but in a place like Nigeria where we are talking about security and insecurity, it might be better we keep our shelters. Even a shelter that is not known is much better. Let people just know we have a refuge place for them and have where to keep them. Because most of the time, these men, great apology to our dear man on the, perpetrators, let me use the word, which can be a man or a woman. They don't really like to let go. So, and you don't want to endanger the life of our women or whoever we are trying to help. Once more, thank you very much for this great initiative. and I would just like to be a part of it. Please, if there is any way we can help, I'm very, very, very happy to help, and to whatever extent in terms of coordinating or collaborating together. God bless the efforts in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you very much, Madam Abiola Crown. I'm just going to go quickly on to Temi Twiggy. Temi Twiggy, your hand is raised up.
Yeah, good evening, everyone.
Yeah, hello.
I'm so happy to be part of this evening, and I'm also sorry for coming late as well. I just got to the house. Quickly, I just want to chip out something or just few points that violence did not just start, from adulthood. Majority of those who are perpetrators, be it male or female today, they started from somewhere. Probably they were abused when they were much younger. And for instance, like parents who didn't really have much time with their children, trusting the care of their words to the hands of the housemates and all that, the security guards, the what have you, from there, most children were being abused at tender age. And when they are grown, some of them, the memory lingers. And when they are grown, they also would like to practice that with other children, innocent children. So I think the most important thing is for parents to get the orientation, to get orientated on the need for them, to care for their children more, as in to really take care of their children instead of leaving them into the hands of their domestic workers, because it is very, very important. And secondly, again, I've had cases of siblings being abused by one another, brother to sister, even sisters to sisters, brothers to brothers. There is no how such will grow up and will not end up abusing other children. So we need to get parents educated that, look, it is a necessity for you as parents to be responsible for your children. It's not just about the female child alone, but it has to be with both genders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Temi. I'm just going to hand over now to Bisi as we begin to wrap up. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And please remember everyone to fill in the Google form. Thank you very much. So Dr. Bisi Adebayo, could you kindly take over from here as we wrap up?
Yeah, thank you so much, Noye. This has been a very interesting session, and I'm so glad that all the issues that has come up. In wrapping up, I would like to recount a few points that were discussed this evening. It's unfortunate that we really focused a lot on rape, and I think this is one of the things that we need to, address later on or in other subsequent sessions, as well as male violence, violence on men, women violence on men. This is gender-based violence, and it's not just, the perpetrators are not just women, it's both ways. Most important thing also that came up is also the political will. We've heard from the different first ladies that the governments are actually involved, and it's really exciting to hear what's happening at that state level. So political will, to an extent, it is there, and that I think this is something that can also be worked on more. Violence against women is beyond, it's not just an issue of physical violence, and it's not just as a result of the perpetrator, the strength of the perpetrator, the power tussle, or the imbalance, gender imbalance between male and female. There are also sociocultural issues, and I'm glad that the social court justice lady, Judge Fumi Ashalu, brought that up. We need to develop empathy so that we can sympathize with victims, when we hear their stories, that we can sympathize with other women. This is something that can be learned, and I'm glad that Adetun brought that up. Empathy amongst ourselves for other women, to get other women on our side, to hear their stories. Gender-based violence is being described by the UN as any act of GBV that results or is likely to result. So sometimes even the intention, the emotional abuse, the battery, the harassment on the streets, cyber, in schools, in workplace, these are all gender-based violence and violence against women. Female genital mutilation, early marriage. I watched a program last night on the telly, and I would implore every one of us to look for it. It's called Dry. It's been a while since I cried watching something that I know is being acted. It's not real, it was fiction, but it still got me that moved. We will look into collaboration, that is very important. Thank you also to Abiola Crown for bringing up the fact that we need to work with our churches, our church leaders, and other religious leaders. Church religion has been one of the perpetrators of violence against women. I'm very sorry to say that. And with due respect and apology to men and women of God that may be on the program, but there are certain aspects of our religious books that really condone this practice, and they make our women not speak out. So on this note, thank you so much. I would like to thank all of you for your patience and for your time.
Yeah.
Not
Dr. Bisi, Dr.
Yes.
Bisi, sorry to butt in. I understand we have one more poll. Dr. Abi has just dropped.
We can do that poll as we round up. I think it can come up on the screen.
Okay.
Then, yes, it can come up on the screen so that.
Okay.
Yeah. People
Dr. Abi, over to you.
Yeah. So I would like to thank everybody for coming in. We'll get in touch with you. If your question has not been addressed, may I point out that we are going to take each one of them and take them back to our speakers, and we will send this out in messages to you. So while we go on with the last poll, I'd like to thank you again once for joining us for this very interesting session. And in our own, this is our call to action. Let's take this back from here. Let us all develop empathy. Develop empathy to listen to other women when they share their stories, empathy to encourage them, just to be there for them, and to also, recognize when things are not going well with each other. So I will leave that as our call to action. And I thank everybody as we, we disperse. How are we doing with the poll, Abby?
We only have about 20% who have voted.
This is a very important poll, and it's really talking to gender equality. What do we think is responsible for that, and what is the main barrier in our society? Social and cultural, yes. Religion, yes. This is a multiple choice question. Unfortunately, it's not been graded as per priority or order of importance. So
at the moment, we have a tie between education, social and cultural barriers.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have a tie.
Yeah.
Nobody feels religion has a part to play.
Mm-hmm.
And only 14% believe that laws and policies are to play.
Yeah, because the laws and policies are there. It's the enforcement that is the problem. And I also, I think the judge also spoke about that, about even when cases are taken to court, it is the society that also comes back to start pleading for the perpetrator to be released. So we need a lot of societal reorientation, even amongst ourselves. So these are all the points that are on the table for us to pick up. So on this note, I would like to thank you all again for joining us, and then we will be in touch. We've learned a lot this evening, and I'm sure that you have also. So enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you.